So this is our classification guide or field guide that we're making. It's a foldable. It has 6 pages on the front, and we'll be using the 6 pages on the back. Here's page 1. It says living or not. All living things are called biotic. Non-living things are called abiotic. All living things are made of cells. Number 1 says the living things must maintain homeostasis, which is a balance. That means that it can actually control its internal temperature. An organism is a living thing. So anytime you see organism on a test, you know it's referring to a living thing. Organism is a living thing. Page 2, you can pause this, so you can write your notes down. Number 2, I just turned the first flap up. Living things have different levels of organization. So that would start, the smallest living thing is a cell. So it goes cells, cells, then tissue, tissue to organs, organs to organ systems, and organ systems to organism. So you'll need to know these in the correct order. You'll need to know how to put them in order from smallest to largest, which of course smallest is cell. The smallest living things are actually bacteria, and bacteria is a single-celled organism, whereas you are a multicellular organism. Bacteria comes in multiple shapes, such as rods, or spirals, or round. And please remember that 99.8% of all bacteria is actually good and helpful, whereas a very small percentage is actually harmful and makes you sick. Page 3 says living things reproduce, which means they pass on their genetic information, or DNA. We use the term replicate instead of reproduce to indicate viruses need a host cell to multiply. So all living things do mitosis. Mitosis is a process where one cell can divide and become 2. And even a single cell organism like a bacteria does mitosis to actually reproduce. We do mitosis in order to repair and grow. Meiosis is a process where multicellular organisms make sperm and egg. And when they join, that is how reproduction is done for multicellular organizations, through sexual reproduction. But remember, a virus is not alive. Viruses are not made of cells. Viruses cannot reproduce on their own. Viruses' DNA need a host in order to replicate. Living things grow. Again, the process is mitosis, how an organism can actually duplicate its own cells. All multicellular organisms make new cells to become bigger or replace cells that have died. Growth means becoming larger, and development is the change that leads to maturity. Mitosis has 4 steps. I use the acronym PMAT so I can remember what order they go into. That is very important. It is prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Telophase. If any of these steps get interrupted, the organism is not going to be able to duplicate their cells. All of these steps must happen in the correct order in order for organisms to duplicate their cells. Page 5, which is what we did today in Zoom. Living things use energy. Living things use energy. All of these words on this page are very important, starting with autotroph. Auto meaning self, troph meaning feeder. Autotrophs are plants, algae, seaweeds, different things that can do photosynthesis. Heterotrophs mean other feeders. You are a heterotroph. All of the animals in the animal kingdom, which makes up all of your birds, all of your mammals, all your reptiles, amphibians, insects, they're all in the kingdom of Animalia. They're all heterotrophs. They all must consume other things to get energy, including all your types of funguses, yeast and mushrooms and mold. All of those also must consume other things. All living things depend on water for their survival. All living things consume food for energy. The difference is, all living things are either producers or consumers. You are a consumer. The plants outside of your house are producers. They can make their own food. Other examples of producers are seaweed, phytoplankton, which is a baseline in a water ecosystem. Algae. Algae is a very broad term. Some algae are protists, some algae are bacteria, some algae are plant-like, and of course all plants. What they're all doing is they are all capable of capturing energy from the sun and converting it into food that they can use. Very different than a consumer. Consumers are heterotrophs, like I mentioned, all of the animals and all of the fungi and protists. Most protists are also heterotrophs because they must go out and find their own food in order to get energy. So remember, photosynthesis is a process where autotrophs use the sun's energy to convert energy to food that plant can use. Okay? There's a little formula we use where we say the sunlight plus the CO2 in the air plus the H2O that the plant takes in through its roots are all captured in the chloroplasts in the leaves of plants. They're right there in the chloroplast. That organelle is able to convert this into oxygen and glucose. Glucose, another word for glucose, G-L-U-C-O-S-E, would be sugar or food or chemical energy. Blow this up just a little bit so you can see better. There's your last page there. And then number 6 and number 7 are, this is on the very back flap of your foldable. Number 6 is living things respond to stimuli. Any change or signal in the environment that can make an organism react in some way is called a stimulus. Response is an action or change in the behavior. Number 7, living things adapt to their environment. Adaptation and evolution happen. Unintentional changes, which are mutations, that are advantageous to the entire species.